Stop planting a new garden every spring. That habit is exactly why most people never become food independent. You think you are growing food, but you are actually restarting the same system every single year, buying seeds again, fixing soil again, watering constantly, spending money again. And when winter comes, everything disappears like you built nothing at all. That is not gardening, that is dependence disguised as productivity. Real food security does not come from planting every year, it comes from building something that keeps producing whether you start over or not. What most people never calculate is the cost of restarting every year. You do not just plant again, you pay again. Before the first seed goes in, the money is already leaving. Soil fixes that wash away, fertilizer for plant that will not exist in 6 months, water, tools, time, all poured into something designed to reset. That is why it always feels exhausting, because nothing is compounding. You are not building a food system. You are maintaining a seasonal habit. A real system should get stronger without asking you to start over. If each year does not make the next year easier, it is not a system, it is a treadmill, and most gardens never get off it. The shift happens the moment you stop planting things that depend on you and start planting things that know how to live without you. In nature, food does not restart it. Returns every year. The roots go deeper, the plant gets stronger, the work gets lighter. These are perennials, not crops designed for a season, but plants designed to stay. Once established, they come back on their own, already rooted, already adapted, already growing, before you even walk outside. That is when a garden stops being something you rebuild and starts becoming something that continues. Annuals rush to live fast and die young. Perennials do the opposite. They build underground, store energy, prepare quietly. So the question changes. It is no longer what can I grow this year? It becomes how long will this space feed me after I set it up once? That is the moment gardening stops being an activity and becomes infrastructure. This works because you finally stop forcing plants to behave like crops and let them behave like plants. Perennials do not live at the surface. They go down deep into soil, where water lasts longer, where nutrients stay, where heat and cold barely reach. That depth changes everything. They do not panic when the weather shifts. They do not wait for you to water them. They do not need supervision. And once those roots lock in, something quiet starts happening. Leaves fall, become mulch. Soil life builds itself. Fertility increases without bags, without chemicals, without you. Instead of draining the soil, the system starts repairing it. Each season adds strength. Nothing resets. You are no longer maintaining fragile plants, you are overseeing something stable. And at that point, a garden stops acting like a project and starts acting like a machine that keeps running whether you touch it or not. This is the point where most people expect a long list of complicated steps. But the foundation of this system is almost boringly simple. You stop thinking like someone planting a seasonal garden and start thinking like someone placing infrastructure. The question changes not where can I fit this year, but where can this live for the next 20 years? That single shift changes everything. You choose steady sun, light, not temporary shade. You give plants more space than feels necessary, because what looks empty in year 1 is perfect by year 3. Most people crowd things chasing short-term output, but long-term systems need air, room, patience. When roots spread without fighting maintenance, quietly disappears. Paths are placed once, so the soil is never disturbed. Again, plants meant to last decades go where they will never need moving. You are not building beds to rebuild, you are laying out something meant to stay. And once that layout exists, the hardest part is already done, because you stopped creating a garden that depends on you and started one that can continue without being reset. This is where people usually make it complicated. They assume this only works if you find rare plants or exotic varieties. It does not. The goal is not novelty. The goal is food you can count on. You choose plants that return on their own, plants that produce calorie nutrients. Repeat harvests. No replanting, no restarting. They wake up each season already adapted to your soil, already ready to grow. Less time raising seedlings, more time collecting food. A survival garden is not built around variety, it is built around reliability. Every plant has a role. Some give steady greens, some deliver dense energy, others stretch the harvest so food arrives in waves instead of all at once. As they mature, those waves begin to overlap. Production becomes continuous, not seasonal. You stop experimenting and start supplying. The garden stops feeling like a hobby and start acting like a pantry that refills itself, and that is when you realize you are not trying to make a garden work, you are running something designed to feed you. This is where the change becomes visible. Not in the first few weeks, but in the seasons that follow. By the second year, the garden starts returning on its own growth, begins earlier because the roots are already there, already working long. Before you step outside, you are not restarting life, you are witnessing it continue. The workload begins to fade. No trays of seedlings, no rebuilding beds, no racing the calendar. You spend less time managing and more time harvesting, and this is the part most people never expect. The effort does not increase with time, it decreases. Each year, the soil gets darker, softer, more alive, water stays longer. Weeds lose ground, plants grow tougher, handling heat, cold, and unpredictable weather without asking for help. By the third year, some foods simply stop needing to be bought. A few minutes outside replaces another trip to the store. Costs shrink, quietly work spreads naturally instead of piling into one exhausting season. The garden no longer feels like something you must maintain, it feels like something that supports you. Harvests begin to overlap. Spring arrives without planting, summer continues without constant watering, autumn still produces while preparing for rest. Even winter becomes part of rhythm instead of a reset button. You stop fighting the calendar and start moving with it. Somewhere along the way, the relationship changes. You are no longer trying to prove you can grow food, you are living with a space that simply does it. This is why planting once is not about avoiding work. It is about letting that work compound into something that lasts. A backyard food system is not a garden you maintain, it is infrastructure you live with. It gives back time, it gives back stability, it gives back the quiet confidence that part of your life no longer depends on outside systems. You did not just grow plants, you built continuity. By the third year, something subtle shifts. The garden is no longer trying to establish itself, it already knows where it belongs. Roots are deep enough to find moisture on their own, so watering becomes occasional instead of constant. Problems stop asking for your attention because most of them stop appearing. Plants return stronger each season. The space feels predictable now, understandable. It follows a rhythm instead of guesswork. This is where confidence replaces effort. You are no longer trying to make the system survive, you are watching it operate. With less intervention, the garden becomes easier to trust, and that trust lets you step back knowing food will continue to grow even when you are not managing every detail. This does not mean you disappear and never show up again. The system is not abandoned, it is simply no longer demanding. Your role changes from constant labor to light guidance. You walk through harvest what is ready, trim where growth gets dense, and observe instead of trying to control every outcome. Maintenance becomes small, predictable, not exhausting. You are not digging, replanting, or rebuilding anymore. You are adjusting. Difference is everything you do now supports a system that already works instead of trying to rescue one that does not. A few minutes here and there replace entire weekends of effort, and the garden keeps producing whether you intervene or not. This is the balance most people never imagine. Not zero work, but work that finally feels proportional to the food you receive. As the seasons pass, you begin to notice something different. The garden no longer reacts to the calendar the way annual gardens do. Spring arrives and growth is already there. Nothing planted, nothing restarted. The energy was stored underground long before you thought about it. Summer comes without the usual stress. Deep roots handle heat, hold moisture, stay steady, while shallow crops would struggle. Autumn still produces even ebb. The system quietly prepares itself for rest, and winter stops, feeling like an ending because nothing is removed and nothing is reset. The structure remains waiting, ready for the next cycle. Instead of fighting the seasons, you begin moving with them. The garden is no longer something you rebuild 4 times a year. It is something that stays with you, continuing its rhythm whether you are thinking about it or not.